was going to make a dramatic solo intro on this mountain, but it's actually wildly popular up here. But I wanted you to see a clear indicator, YouTubers. A clear indicator of what's coming. See that flag flapping? That's the winds. The winds of change. And it's coming. I don't know if you're ready for it, but it's coming. And there's a lot of people it's going to upset. It's going to make people mad and feel frustrated and disoriented. But solo queue PvP mode is going to become the dominant PvP mode in World of Warcraft. It's going to become the most cared about, the most watched, and very likely the most fun PvP mode moving forward. So let's talk through why all that is, what's happening, kind of the counter arguments through it, and why none of that matters because it's fucking awesome. Here we go. So the first argument that always starts when you see 3v3 versus solo queue is always the skill argument, right? And right away, let's just admit that high-level 3v3 in World of Warcraft takes an insane amount of hand-eye coordination, game knowledge, experience, and also one of the things that these guys always like to leave out of their guides is hundreds, if not thousands of hours of arena experience, right? They always leave the 6 to 8 hours a day played for 3 to 10 years off of their, 10.0 guide. So you become very good at what you do every day. And these guys are very good at World of Warcraft 3v3. And especially at understanding their class, and especially at understanding their class within its composition and how to execute and maximize their class's capabilities within that composition. It's extremely impressive. I mean, absolutely extremely impressive. Okay, so let's just give them that, because as we know, the rank ones and the elite PvP community is a lot of sensitive guys, very sensitive group. So let's just give them that. Now, let's also admit, though, if we're going to give them that they're awesome and they're super skilled, that the WoW PvP community has been consistently dying for some time. So even if you're very skilled and it takes a huge amount of game knowledge and all this interesting stuff to Dragon's Breath and Sap and Sheep and maintain complete control of the game while you burn through cooldowns until ultimately someone doesn't have a cooldown and then you kill that person. And this to watch a bunch of RMPs and other classes do this to each other over and over and over. Well, that's the epitome of fun for a lot of people. It really wasn't drawing the crowds. Now, maybe you are the most amazing rogue with your amazing mage and your amazing priest, or whatever your amazing warrior with your amazing healer and your amazing ret buddy. You're all amazing, right? But what if we take that rogue and instead of putting him in the next round with his mage buddy that he's played with for 5 years, we put him with an enhancement shaman, right? Because that's a very different mindset. Now how good of a rogue are you? When you know your buddy's got, what's this enhancement shaman got? 60 seconds? What is it? Tops. He's going to be alive. I don't care what the healer does. I don't care what he does. That shaman is going down. 60 seconds tops if you've got 2 DPS that know what they're doing. I'm so sorry, shamans. I told you it was coming. You go look back. When I did a video about buffs coming in, I said when they clipped you way back then, you should have known. I ministered to you. Not my fault you didn't listen. It was coming. I told you. Every time you guys get excited, they do this to you every time. You're the battered wives of Warcraft. You and hunters. My God, what they've done to hunters. But I digress. So, let's be very clear that skill doesn't necessarily equal fun, and watching high-level skill doesn't necessarily equal fun. And that sometimes it's really a little randomness and dynamic and chaos is fun. Now, if you're really trying to determine who's the most skilled, probably not a great mode for that. But if you're really just trying to have a lot of fun, great mode for that. And I'm always going to assume that there's more people that care about having a peaceful, fun experience than a super hyper competitive skilled one. I'm not saying that there's not that draw. And the idea is that these will both feed into each other. But I'm going to get into that in a minute. I'm a little skeptical of that myself, but we'll see. But the skill issue is there, and I think the skill clearly belongs in 3v3 as a whole if you define skill in those ways. However, if you define skill in regards to your understanding of your class and your ability to execute it in a more dynamic situation with ever changing variables, weaknesses, and compositions, you could argue that in some ways you would need a very broad understanding of the game and maybe even a further understanding of the game to maximize your effort in that way. Now, that's going to be, whatever. And we'll see how that all plays out. But this idea that 3v3 alone is just going to stand supreme and it's never going to be touched and this is just always going to be considered the LFR, okay, but you got to go where the money goes if you're Blizzard. And again, I think there's a huge amount of the PvP community, and I think if you want fresh blood into this PvP community, you need to have modes that are more fun-focused rather than just necessarily composition and, what if you're in a composition where you do have overlapping CCs? Then what do you do? What do you do if you can't set up a 16-second CC chain? Now what's your strategy? You got 15 seconds and then we're going. I think that's kind of fun. I really enjoy it, and I think it's a lot of fun. And to be quite frank, I even if you say 3v3 is way more skillful than solo arena in every way, and you say that ultimately it's 3v3, competitive 3v3 is still more fun, okay, but there's still a lot of pros to solo queue that it still has. Even if you give all the skill, which I think a lot of people are going to contest. I don't think it's as clear cut to some people that all of the skill belongs in 3v3. I think some people make some very compelling arguments that solo queue does require a pretty high level, especially at the highest level. Requires some skill. Now, it's not the same type of skill, but it does require some. But remember, that's the best thing that 3v3 has going for it. Everything else, I think, is in solo queue's corner. All right, don't freak out. Don't freak out. It's Shadowlands. I know we're only going to be here for a second, but I have to show people because if you weren't in Shadowlands, you don't know what it was like. So let me show you. When you wanted to do arenas in Shadowlands, what you had to do was click on your little group finder, right? And you'd have to go find a group. Now, this is something that you won't see a lot of the rank ones and stuff talk about because they got their little cliques and they got their little rank one healers and their little groups, and they don't do any of this. They log on. They've got a list of people dying to play with them for both because they're excellent players and because they want the attention that comes with playing with them, right? Which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's not the same as everybody else that's having to go through this medium, right? So you would come up and you would look through here, and most of the time everybody's looking for a healer, right? So a healer would finally queue up, but if you lost 2 of those games, they'd often leave right away. So then you'd have to come start a new group and you'd start the cycle over again. Or you go in as a healer, and this is the expansion I started healing in, and you'd get flamed because you weren't very good yet, which is pretty normal. And then this community wants to know why it doesn't have healers. And so you would do that over and over. Furthermore, you didn't know when someone was going to join your group, so you spent most of the time running around circles in Ouroboros because you didn't know if you were going to get a partner in 30 seconds or 2 hours. And so you'd run around and just be ready because you needed to be ready to queue immediately because some people would queue and be like, let's go. You're like, okay, shit, sorry. I was trying to do some things while I was waiting, right? But they'd leave before. So you're almost in a panic to get it queued. That's what the old way was. So I just want you to remember that when people start talking about which mode is more skilled, that it fucking sucked finding groups, and it can still suck finding groups in Shadowlands and in old 3v3. And solo queue allows you to bypass all of that hassle. Go do dailies, watch Netflix, whatever you want. I mean, this notion that everybody wants an insta queue is not true. A lot of people enjoy having a little bit longer queue because they can do dailies in between. They can go change some laundry, check on their family, whatever it is. This idea that we all want to be stuck in our chair and just stimulated the entire time we're playing is just not true. It's nice to have little, peaks and valleys to a game session. It's nice to have a nice flow. So When people get to really complaining and start telling you how great 3v3 is over solo queue, just start doing laps in Ouroboros like this, okay? Because this is what it used to be. This is how awesome it was. It was a dying community where the only people left playing it were sitting in Ouroboros running laps. So let's just remember that. And that leads me into my second point. So I will die on this hill, but I want to say it emphatically that the toxicity in solo queue is almost non-existent for me. The whole community has been very good to me. I've had a very positive experience overall. And compared to the toxicity I experienced in Shadowlands, I feel like I'm in Disney World. Most of these DPS are telling me they're apologizing to me. Every once in a while I get someone to go play randoms or you don't belong here. That's okay. That's going to happen. But I got way worse and way more of that in Shadowlands than I'm getting in Dragonflight solo queue, which further encourages me to play it. I mean, why the hell am I going to go play 3v3 now? I'm capped. I'm only not pushing higher right now because I'm waiting for him to iron out all the MMR stuff and hopefully get one swipe of balance passes here because I'm having a hard time on the spell, I got to tell you. We'll see. It's coming. Have faith in the light, right? But this solo queue mode is way better than looking for an old group in the experiences I had in the old way. It is a much better experience in every regard, from my flexibility and what I can do with my time to the community and the experiences and the social interactions I'm having are way improved in solo queue versus old 3v3. And it does make you wonder if the more casual game modes just attacks the more casual people. And those people maybe have different ideas about how to treat people and how important it is whether we win or lose. You know, maybe those intensely competitive game modes and draw those guys that are just intensely competitive. And they care a lot, and that drives some really great play, but it also can drive some really shitty attitudes. And I think a lot of us would just rather be 1800 and deal with, try to push 1800 and play with people that are a little more relaxed and fun than have to go in there and play against the sweat lords that are raging because I missed a sap off a trap or whatever the hell, right? I mean, I don't even know what the fuck's going on half the time. I'm surprised when I win half the time. Oh, someone died? Oh, shit. So, solo queue has been remarkable in that way. It's been a breath of fresh air, and I think it's going to really has the potential to save and also create a new era for the WoW PvP community, and I'm very excited about that. Go solo queue. So with how easy gearing is, you can definitely see that a lot of people are going to play more characters, I think. And you could see how that could feed into more people PvPing competitively. However, these guys kind of hold an interesting piece of the puzzle because while it is easier to gear something and get it fully geared out, I don't understand what the compulsion is necessarily going to be to push that new class into a competitive 3v3. I think for a lot of people, solo queue will be more fun and preferable. So the idea that 3v3 is going to explode or be the LFR for 3v3, right? And that people are going to use it to test specs and talents that they haven't played before. And then once they get good with them, they're going to go push in real groups. I don't know that that's true. I think a lot of people will just forgo the hassle of having to find the real group and they'll learn to be comfortable with their 1800 in solo queue. And if they need a camp, they'll go RBG. And I think that's really good for World of Warcraft. However, you do wonder how that's going to shake and affect the long-term 3v3 and competitive scene. Because it's very, or at least not completely unlikely that at least solo queue becomes at least as popular viewing and views drawing potential that could be about the same as 3v3. What if it draws more views, more attention than competitive 3v3? Now what do? Do you balance around competitive 3v3? Or now you balance it against your new popular game mode that's growing? Decisions. So I want to be crystal clear. I am in no way trying to imply that 3v3 is not the most skillful game mode. I think it probably is. My only implication here is that there's a seems to be a very consistent statement or kind of attitude amongst the high-ranked PvPers that solo queue doesn't really matter, and that it's just here to kind of be a talent tester and spec tester. And all I'm trying to say is I'm not 100% sure that's true. I think there might be some not insignificant portion of the community that will prefer this game mode over rated 3s. The idea that this is just going to feed people into rated 3s, I don't know that that's 100%. I think some people will just stick with solo queue and that'll be plenty. And then they'd rather just go level up an alt and play some more solo queue than take their alt that they got into solo queue into rated 3v3. And then as more and more people do that, and 3v3 actually doesn't grow, it only gets smaller, well, that could be an interesting scenario. But maybe 3v3 just stays dominant, and LFR does solo queue does become LFR for PvP. But I'm not as convinced that that's 100% assured yet. I think if they continue balancing this thing the way they are, and they get some of this class tuning figured out, I think they've done something pretty special. And I think this could breathe real life and longevity, ironically, into the already longest MMO, or one of the longest running MMOs. But I think they've done something real special here, and I'm having a real good time. So we'll see what happens, family. But for now, Oklahoma out.